I never thought my life would change in an instant, but it did. One moment I was lying in a hospital bed, monitors beeping, doctors scrambling, and in the next, everything went silent. No sound, no light, just a sudden stillness, as if the entire world paused. I knew I was dying, but what came next was not what I expected. My consciousness lifted out of my body, and I found myself surrounded by an overwhelming brightness, warm, yet piercing to the soul. Then I saw him, Jesus. His presence wasn't like the images I had grown up seeing. It was purer, more consuming, more real than anything I had ever experienced. His gaze wasn't just upon me. It was through me. Before I could utter a word, he spoke. Listen carefully. A time is coming when the world will fall into sudden silence. His words weren't cryptic. They were direct, heavy, and filled with a sense of divine urgency. He continued, in 2025, the internet, the web of voices that so many trust, will be silenced for 7 days. Without warning, my heart trembled. I was shown visions, vivid and terrifying. Cities where screens flickered to black. People clutching their phones, desperately tapping on devices that had become their lifeline, only to be met with void. Entire streets lined with businesses shuttered. Communication cut. The noise of the digital age gone. But what struck me wasn't just the technological failure. It was the chaos of the human heart. People weren't panicking because of the blackout itself. They were panicking because their souls had forgotten how to be still. In the silence, their inner emptiness echoed louder than any siren. Jesus' tone was both compassionate and stern. Many will not survive the silence, not because of physical lack, but because their spirits are unprepared. He showed me 3 distinct images, a family sitting together, but each isolated in their digital worlds, a church building empty of prayer, yet filled with broadcast equipment, a global map where small pockets of light, people in genuine worship, stood amidst vast zones of darkness. The message was unmistakable. The 7-day internet blackout wasn't just a technical event. It was a spiritual mirror. Before I could respond, he said something that pierced me to the core. I'm giving them this warning so they can prepare in stillness before the silence forces upon them. At that moment, I felt the weight of a commission being placed upon me. I was not just a witness. I was now a messenger. As I stood before Jesus, the scenes around me shifted. The radiant light that had embraced me faded into a panoramic vision of the earth. It wasn't a peaceful sight. There was a trembling, a spiritual unrest moving beneath the surface of humanity. I saw people so engrossed in their devices, their eyes glazed over, minds consumed by the endless scroll of distractions, news feeds, entertainment, arguments, all wrapped in a digital fog that numbed their souls. Jesus pointed toward a glowing thread, a web that crisscrossed the earth, the internet. It pulsed like a living organism, but it was feeding on humanity's attention. They have forgotten how to hear me, Jesus said. They run to the noise instead of to my voice. That's why the silence must come. Suddenly, I was taken into a vision of the exact moment the internet would fall. It was abrupt. No warnings. No countdown. It was as if an unseen hand simply switched off the entire network of human communication. News outlets went dark. Social media vanished. Banking systems froze. Businesses stood paralyzed. Families, who once filled rooms with laughter and conversation, sat in eerie stillness, lost in panic because their devices could no longer fill the silence. But in the midst of the chaos, I saw something else. Small groups, scattered across cities, towns, and even remote villages, were gathering in prayer. They were the ones who had heeded the message. They weren't dependent on a screen to commune. Their hearts had been trained to hear the still small voice of God. Jesus turned his gaze back to me, his eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. Tell them the silence is mercy, a pause for the souls who still have ears to hear. But many will miss it because they're addicted to the noise. He showed me people frantically searching for answers in their disconnected devices. But the real answers were right there, waiting in his presence. Those 7 days will feel like 7 years to the unprepared, he said. But to those who are ready, it will be a sanctuary of awakening. I felt an urgency in my spirit, not fear, but divine urgency. This was not a message to be delayed. It was a lifeline, and I knew then that if I returned, I would be held accountable for sharing it. The vision intensified. Jesus reached out his hand, and instantly I was taken to a vantage point above a sprawling metropolis. I watched as day one of the internet blackout began. At first, there was confusion. People assumed it was a glitch, a momentary technical failure. They rebooted devices, called their providers, but nothing changed. By the end of day 2, the confusion gave way to frustration and anger. Supermarkets were flooded with panicked shoppers, not because of food shortages, but because their digital payment systems failed. Banks couldn't process transactions. Online businesses came to a standstill. Social media influencers, broadcasters, and digital content creators, suddenly voiceless, sat in silence, their identities crumbling without an audience. But Jesus turned my attention elsewhere. In quiet homes, I saw families kneeling in prayer. In small gatherings, people opened their Bibles, some for the first time in years. The absence of digital noise had forced them to confront the void in their souls. For some, the silence was suffocating. For others, it became a holy space of rediscovery. By day 4, the world had split into 2 realities. One group was still clinging to their devices, spiraling into anxiety and fear, unable to function without the constant hum of information and validation. The other group had surrendered. They embraced the stillness. They listened, not for notifications, but for God's whisper. Jesus showed me that the 7-day blackout wasn't meant to punish the world. It was a divine invitation, a pause, a reset. But he also warned that many would harden their hearts during this time, while others would find the awakening their souls had been starving for. Then I was taken into a vision of day 7. On the final day of the blackout, a massive spiritual shift occurred. Some individuals, who had mocked faith and dismissed the warnings, suddenly broke down in tears, crying out for forgiveness. They realized their lives had been built on a fragile digital facade, and in the silence, the truth became deafening. Others, however, refused to yield. Their hearts grew cold, their anger turning into spiritual blindness. They cursed the silence, unable to see that it was God's mercy in disguise. Jesus spoke once more. Those who hear during these 7 days will be ready for what comes next. Those who refuse will be swept away when the noise returns. The weight of his words pressed on my chest. I knew then that my return to life would not be for comfort. It would be to deliver this urgent message, no matter who rejected it. The vision faded, and I felt myself falling back toward the earth. As I descended, I saw people staring at their blank phone screens, others shouting into lifeless microphones, desperate to be heard. But amidst the chaos, there were pockets of people huddled together, quiet, peaceful, their hands joined in prayer. They were not afraid. They were ready. Suddenly, I gasped awake. The sharp beeping of a hospital monitor filled my ears, and bright lights seared my vision. Nurses rushed around me, voices urgent, but their words blurred into background noise. My heart was pounding, not from fear of death, but from the overwhelming burden of what I had seen. I had been given a 7-day window of mercy, a countdown not just for technological silence, but for spiritual awakening. And now I had returned with a mission. This was not a warning about the internet. It was a warning about the heart. Jesus had made it clear. The 7-day blackout would strip away every distraction we hide behind. Social media validation, news cycles, constant entertainment. All of it would vanish, forcing humanity to confront what's left when the noise stops. He told me that during these 7 days, many would hear his voice for the first time, not through preachers or screens, but through the silence that follows obedience. But he also warned, if they do not listen to silence, they will not listen when the noise returns. As I recovered in that hospital bed, the urgency never left me. I knew many would laugh at this message. Some would call it fear-mongering. Others would dismiss it as nonsense. But it didn't matter. I had seen what was coming. This isn't about a global internet failure. This is about the condition of your soul when everything else is stripped away. When the blackout comes, whether it's in 2025 or sooner, will you panic or will you pray? Will you chase after a digital echo, or will you be found in the quiet, hearing God's still small voice? This is not a call to stockpile goods or buy generators. This is a call to prepare your heart. Because when the silence comes, only those who have ears to hear will understand what it's for. If you're watching this now, this is your opportunity. Don't wait for the 7 days of silence to realize you've been deaf to the one voice that truly matters. Repent. Reconnect with God. Warn others, not with panic, but with love and urgency. The blackout is not the judgment. It's the mercy. But what comes after? For those who don't listen, that's where eternity is decided.